All right, so we're going to get into Layer-2 solutions for Bitcoin today. And I know a lot of you out there are thinking, well, wait a minute, Paul, how does the Layer-2 work within Bitcoin? There's a lot happening on the Lightning Network. We're going to talk to a company today that I think will give you a lot more insight what the potential is for utility in Bitcoin. So we're going to dive in deep. My name is Paul Barron. Welcome back into TechPath. Joining me today is Paul Sztorc, who is the founder and CEO of Layer-2 Labs. So great having you on the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Paul, so let's get into a little bit about this. Some of our audience, many of who view this video might be new to Bitcoin or new to blockchain and crypto in general. And then we have some OGs. They've been around since, maybe all the way back to 2012. And they've been in and around Bitcoin for some time. Explain to our audience a little bit about what Layer-2 Labs is trying to do with Bitcoin.
Well, the important thing in building out technology is that it actually always happens in layers. So there's a lot of layers to the internet. There are the physical cables that connect all of the actual devices. And then there are these routing computers that pass information from one person's computer to the next. And then at the top, you have the applications, which would be like, sending messages, Snapchat,
Sure.
web browser, YouTube, whatever, those types of things. So Bitcoin needs additional layers in order to actually start doing really useful things. The initial application released by Satoshi is very good at its one specific thing.
Right.
And it's going to be the basis of all this future activity, which now must be constructed.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing that people look to Bitcoin in most cases is store of value and kind of the ultimate store of value. Many look at it as, well, maybe it is a payment method, but to do payments, we need to consider transaction scenarios that play into this to be able to deal with scale. Lightning Network comes along, has some sort of opportunity to be able to do that. Some people like Lightning, some people in the use case. And then you have companies like, say, Strike or what Jack Mallers is doing, who are building within that and kind of creating those components for utility. When you look at what you guys are trying to do, and just like on the Bitcoin improvement proposals, I'm going to kind of show something here for our audience. This is kind of the directive that you guys have taken on. So changes that basically are referred to Bitcoin improvement proposals, if implemented, create formal change to Bitcoin. True to Bitcoin's decentralized nature, anyone can propose a BIP, and the community obviously will discuss this. Explain how you guys are trying to implement this kind of technology for Bitcoin.
Well, the BIP process, I'm very familiar with it, and it's changed an awful lot over the last 10 or so years. And our strategy in trying to persuade people to adopt the BIP is to just build the software and show people exactly what it can do, and then they'll see for themselves how great it is, and also that it has no negative attributes. That's the key with the BIP, is you have to not only demonstrate theoretically and technically in the document of the BIP, you have to not only demonstrate that in theory, but also we have to defend it in practice and in technical discussions with people that the BIP won't have any negative impacts on the rest of the protocol. So that is challenging because of how skeptical some people can be. But I'm sure we'll have 100% of the people convinced soon.
All right, so I'm looking at your website, Layer-2 Labs, making every transaction a Bitcoin transaction. So good stuff there. Yeah, it says you have 6 sidechain designs in development, already including 2 of which are exact clones of Ethereum. And
one is a clone of Ethereum, one is a clone of zCash.
Okay, yeah.
We don't need a second clone of Ethereum at this moment, although that is an interesting topic in itself, because this is a story that's happened with Ethereum where its blocks have filled up and the fees on Ethereum have risen, and as a result, competitors to Ethereum have done very well by just being an exact copy of Ethereum. So that's an example of the horizontal scaling idea of just stamping out copies of.
What is the purpose? Why not? I mean, and this is something I get into conversations all the time with not only Bitcoin Bitcoiners, they don't like to be called maxis, and then you get in conversations with blockchain specialists, people that understand blockchain in general as a whole, as a science. Why not see, and I'm kind of just a question to you in general, when you look at Bitcoin and its current infrastructure, what it has the potential to do, and then the demands of what the current market state is today, which many people look at Bitcoin as a potential use case for payment, but we need transaction layer capability to do that. Then you look at Bitcoin as a store of value, pretty much already reset there. Do you ever see this? Because one thing you note in your website, second, it says you plan to improve Bitcoin's UX. Explain what that would mean to an average Bitcoin user or some maybe that is purchasing Bitcoin for the first time. How does that affect their world in interacting with Bitcoin?
Well, just my own personal opinion is that we could do a lot better in terms of the Bitcoin user experience. So one thing that bothers me is that the people who adopt the technology, the education is bad. I feel like the software should at least try to explain a little bit of what it's doing. And you can just organize if the software is organized the right way, it is actually easy to use and sort of self-explanatory. It's hard to give a lot. I can go through a list of examples of you. I don't know why we have addresses at all, because they're very confusing to normal people. We don't have a user-friendly multi-sig that is multi-signature, which is very good for storage and deterring theft and other. So like the multi-sig is a great technique for making it so that no one would even try to steal anyone's Bitcoin, but instead there are routinely stories of people accidentally losing their coins or getting robbed. Or so I don't know why that's not that was invented a long time ago, 8 years ago or so, and that's just the user experience just isn't prioritized because of various reasons. I could give you my theories if you like, but
well, I mean, some people will argue that why not go with like an ENS, an Ethereum name service? What has happened with Ethereum of being able to essentially address the situation of addresses? Do you see something like that in terms of a layer 2 being able to function that way?
Absolutely. The Satoshi actually himself he was a co-inventor of something called Namecoin, which that was back in 2010 or so. And so he thought there was an opening for a name concept. I wholeheartedly agree with him. I think that in the future, there will just be I actually think this is a big area of where the blockchain can make a big improvement in everyone's lives on the planet Earth, is that everyone will have just a name that they use to log into everything. And so there's this story has taken lots of twists and turns, but in the past, the whole blockchain applications that weren't Bitcoin, those were all mostly nonsense. There was a big wave of that in 2016. But unfortunately, as a result of that wave, everyone has concluded that nothing new should be done. And we have discarded even ideas like that one, the name system, that even Satoshi thought was a good idea and worked on back in 2010. So
do you think that
has merit?
Yeah, I mean, because you're right. There is a bit of a pushback from the Bitcoin community. If you look at something you talked about here on your website, privacy, extensibility, scale, infighting mentioned, highlighted that specifically.
A huge problem. Yeah, I mean, this is a thing. Regular people experience it all the time. They try to join the Bitcoin community, and then they get a very strange welcome, which is like, we don't even want you here, or you'll come crawling back, or you get some weird. This is partially a result of this is result of Bitcoin's lack of sidechains, but also there was this scaling war that happened in 2016, 2017, and one of the sides won decisively. The better side won, but it would have been better not to fight at all, because now the winning side just believes that complete and total victory is like predestined, and so that we don't need to actually do anything anymore. And so they have become very complacent and overconfident, which is one of the reasons why I started this company, is because
that can be dangerous for sure. I think in any technology, we've seen this happen in other technologies throughout time. I mean, if you look back at what the evolution of just the mobile phone, what we saw with BlackBerry, exactly the same kind of scenario, that they get just They got plowed
you
under.
can never get complacent. You eventually
Yeah.
and this happened countless times just in any business or in any country, any army. People have a country will have an empire and it will collapse. This happened. Same story
With
about
that,
Jeff Bezos is right. You have to treat every day as though it's the first
I like that.
day. Yeah.
One thing, though, if you look at it this way and you think about Bitcoin going into this type of utility layer, doesn't it create more centralization of Bitcoin?
It's
That
designed
obviously.
not to do that. Yeah, that's the concern.
Explain that a little bit. Talk to me
I
about.
can. Sure, I can try to. I wrote a post a long time ago called "Measuring Decentralization" for the Bitcoin community in September of 2015, and so anyone can read that post. It's very long and detailed. In that, because there was a big disagreement over whether or not the block size would impact centralization, and so I realized that actually the whole dispute was just about what is decentralization. And so if something exists, then you can measure it. And so I wrote this post about how to measure what it is. And the conclusion is that it is the cost of spinning up a new full node on the Bitcoin network. And the way sidechains are designed is that the full node does not look at what a sidechain, a different piece of software, is doing. It only looks at this very cogent summary that is already published within the layer 1 block. And as a result, your full node on the Bitcoin network can ignore, it has the option to ignore everything that is happening outside the network. And that is exactly why it cannot be negatively affected by the sidechains. Whereas the users of the sidechain, they have the option to send their coins to this zone where they may benefit by taking advantage of different features. So, for example, the Ethereum Turing complete smart contracts, so the zCash, zk snarks, or larger block size a version of Bitcoin. So the user has an option of taking advantage of something that the other users who do not take advantage of that option, they don't have to look at it. So it's opt-in. They can ignore it, and that's why it doesn't harm the decentralization of the network.
A lot of stuff to jump into. I want to take a break here for a word from our sponsors, and we'll get back to this. If you guys are looking at going into long-term holding, which is what we probably should be doing right now, is looking at strategies that are thinking more long-term. And one of the ones that I use, of course, is crypto IRAs. And this is one of the best places out there, I think, that is a good place to start. You can, of course, invest crypto in gold also, as well as silver. They have a ton of assets available too, so it's more than just Bitcoin and ETH. There's a lot happening over on iTrust Capital. And they're one of the more, I would say, conservative companies out there. They do a great job at doing education, and they do a fantastic job, I think, in just delivering on just a quality service. So if you want to get a $100 funding reward, just use our link below in the description, and it's going to help the channel out. I won't say names or anything, but I talk to a lot of Bitcoiners, and I'm asking the question a lot around, send me the best innovations that are happening in Bitcoin today, and show me how that this can continue to grow without the use of either a sidechain or some sort of layer 2 solution. They always come back with Lightning. Explain the difference between what's happening with Lightning today, because some people would say that's somewhat decentralized, and what's happening in maybe on what you guys are doing with Layer 2 Labs.
Sure. So the Lightning Network has a long history. When it was proposed back in 2015, and the creators of the Lightning Network never intended it to be the end-all, be-all, the only, like, they never intended that to be the entire Hail Mary pass that all of Bitcoin was built on. But over time, because again, I think these are social and political reasons that they're not rational reasons, and they're not even believed. The technical experts in the community are mostly immune to all this, the political junk that build up. But one of these things was that the community split into two camps, and each camp needed talking points. And so that idea of the Lightning Network being the layer 2 was just a talking point. And so this entire conversation is just a casualty of the block size war, in my view, because before the block size war, there was always going to be the idea that there'd be many layer twos, but afterwards, and the community also grew a lot. So you have lots of new people. There's like 10 times more new people who just joined in like the past year than there were old people who would have had more than a year of experience. So the technical differences, I can get into those if you like. I mean, one is that
I'd love to hear it. Yeah.
Yeah, the Lightning Network is constructed of multi-signature outputs. So they're constructed out of channels. Every channel is a multi-signature output on layer 1. So you have to broadcast a transaction on layer 1 in order to join the Lightning Network with one channel. Every time you need a new channel, or every time you want to close a channel, or every time you want to rebalance a channel, change the liquidity of a channel, every single time you want to do any of those things, you have to change a multi-signature output on layer 1, which means that you need to broadcast another transaction on layer 1. So the onboarding is more tightly connected in the Lightning Network than in the sidechain world. In the sidechain world, one person can send a large number of coins, like some rich person can send like 50,000 coins with a single transaction, from layer 1 over to the sidechain, and then on the sidechain they can onboard an unlimited number of people over there.
Okay.
The Lightning Network has some big advantages in terms of speed, and some say in privacy, because the entire transaction does not touch the global ledger.
Right.
Lightning transactions can happen instantly if they succeed and if there's a route. That's an advantage of the Lightning Network, whereas the sidechain transactions are tied to the heartbeat of Bitcoin, the 10-minute block time you have to.
Block building.
That's when once you find a new block, it covers the main chain transaction and all the sidechain transactions. The Lightning Network also has something that I think the Lightning Network has something called channel risk, where that's my word for it, which is that it matters a great deal exactly who your channels are open with. They can inconvenience you greatly if the channels go down, or if the person is unreliable, someone along the payment route has their phone off or something, then it won't work. Whereas sidechains, the risk is more global. Like if the whole sidechain is up, the whole sidechain is up. If the whole sidechain is down, then it means that it crashed for everyone. So
yeah,
I think that's a little bit better, because when you have if sidechain's popular enough, it's quite likely that there'll be enough people keeping the whole thing alive for everyone. So, but they have advantages and disadvantages. The more important thing is that, unfortunately, the community has been trained to just think of layer 2 as equaling the Lightning Network, and that has never been the case. And it's also, I just think that the community has to we have to be firing on like all cylinders in every direction. So
Paul, because this is something that I've kind of run into with Bitcoin in general, because I believe there is a bit of a gateway process of where digital investors enter the market. Typically, they're going to enter the market in something that's passionate to them, some technology, some altcoin, some NFT, something like that. Eventually, they find their way to Bitcoin. And this is something that I've witnessed here on our own network through our own members and users and viewers, is eventually, yes, they all find their way to Bitcoin. The likelihood is they own some Bitcoin. The killer point here is that within the community, because it is so isolated into this centralization of Bitcoin, then crypto, kind of as a separate discussion point, you do get a lot of that pushback. With that being the case, especially around technology adoption and the ability to grow Bitcoin, what's the likelihood of Bitcoin actually getting a sidechain? I mean, based on what you know of the communities and what your research and your work has been a part of, I mean, what's the probability here out of 1 in 10, 10 being best?
Well, I don't see it in terms of chance. It depends on whether or not the community decides on something. It's important to point out the bit process has slowed considerably, whereas there used to be many more of them, and in particular, there used to be soft fork multiple times per year. Like the first 7 years of Bitcoin, there were many times per year. There were like 15 or so in the first 7 years of Bitcoin, but then there have only been two in the most recent. Segwit took something like, I don't remember, maybe like 20, 30 months, and Taproot took something like 40 or 50 months. So the process has been slowing down considerably, and that's important to point out. So I think it'll be slow, but I think, this idea has actually been picking up steam slowly but steadily over the last 2 or so years, and now we have a lot of people in favor of it. I think it is a matter of just making the demonstration. So we're going to build all the software, we're going to build everything out so that as soon as it activates, all of that can hop over to Bitcoin. And I think that I don't see it in terms of chance, I think, but if you asked me to put a likelihood on it, I would say that it's more than 50% that it would eventually happen. Yeah. It's a question of time, I think.
Yeah, I was looking at your Twitter. You have a pinned post here from back in October. It says you copied Ethereum into BIP 300 sidechain. Obviously the zCash, this was the thing we were talking about a little bit earlier. And with sidechain potential on Bitcoin,
I'm sorry.
What would be the need? No worries. With sidechain on Bitcoin, what would be the need of even utilizing other networks like Ethereum and others like them in the layer 1 capacity? Would this not pretty much address all of the needs within the crypto / Bitcoin world in terms of utility?
The idea is that you would not need an altcoin if you could have the sidechain version. So I think, for some reason, I think sidechains have been very confused. I have my own theories about what went wrong in the history of Bitcoin that led to all this confusion. But the sidechain idea is to be a copy or simulation of any altcoin. So you would no longer need the Ethereum altcoin. You would just do whatever, you just copy all the code, and then you'd have an Ethereum, like a bit Ethereum, living that was doing everything the Ethereum was doing, just with Bitcoin. And same thing for everything else. So many people over the last 5, 6, 7 years have tried lots of new ideas. 99% of those ideas are completely terrible, but there's a good 1% that they're either very useful today and they have lots of paying customers and lots of happy users, or they're very fringe, but they are worth trying. It's so good that they're worth trying.
Yeah.
And those ideas are the vital few that we want to skim off.
Yeah, I think there are some projects out there that, maybe the conversion would work, but I think to your point is everybody kind of has an agenda, at least, all the projects that I talk to, they kind of have their own vision of what their copy of Ethereum or their new layer 1 project really represents in terms of growth and what its utility might be. So I understand that because, it's competition, whether it's a good idea or a bad idea, everybody kind of reverts back to, in many cases, to what they always talk about, and that's Bitcoin. When you think about Bitcoin, last question for you is NFTs. Could we ever see an NFT within a sidechain application on a layer 2 with Bitcoin?
Yeah, and I think that we can and we will and we should also, because even though the NFT idea is very shaky investment per se, it's nothing fundamentally wrong with it. It's not. We have art. We have that banana with the duct tape at Art Basel or whatever, where we have weird art, and we have baseball cards and other collectibles. So the idea is fine, and actually having it on a sidechain is a very good explanation. It actually promotes clarity, because the sidechain will be paying Bitcoin as transaction fees and be using Bitcoin as money in exchange for the assets. So this would be actually a way of teaching people something that has confounded them for a very long time, which is a lot of people are like, Bitcoin, tokens, whatever, like people, NFTs, people don't really understand how it all works. But if we had a bit assets sidechain, it could have NFTs on it, and then you would see the difference between the NFT that anyone can create and anyone can name and anyone can send around, and with Bitcoin, which is paying the transaction fee for the blockchain layer and being used as money. So actually, I think that would actually be very helpful and help everyone understand what an NFT is and what Bitcoin is, and what the relationship is between.
It's a very intriguing scenario. You know, we here study of both crypto and blockchain and what's happening with Bitcoin. I'm always intrigued by these kinds of advancements. So I wish the best of luck for you guys over at Layer-2. I can't wait to see more from you as things start to develop. I think especially as we start to see this next run on the general investment markets, I think we'll see a lot more adoption in terms of general people, both from a public standpoint, retail, as well as institutional, which could put a lot of pressure into Bitcoin in the essence of needing that capability of a potential sidechain or Layer-2. So it's going to be interesting to watch. But Paul, it's been great having you on the show. Thanks so much for stopping in today. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
You bet. All right, so you guys are tuned in over here on maybe on the podcast side of things. Make sure and jump over here to the YouTube channel. We do a lot of these kinds of videos where we'll do deep dives on something as complex as Bitcoin and Layer-2, but also we get into a ton of macro analysis, chart analysis. We do all that right here on the YouTube channel. All you have to do is just search Paul Barron Network. You'll find us. Of course, if you want to reach me, it is out there on Twitter, @Paul Barron. We'll catch you next time right here on TechPath.